the camera at all that one day is what happened. Like, that was weird.
Well, dude, it's funny because I was thinking about
it was
that
better, too. That was the best episode.
today. I was thinking about it today, though. Like, obviously, we could do a lot of different things with this and be more professional. But I mean,
guess, but I don't even know what those are.
Yeah, right.
Or how to filter down.
Well, but that's what this is. It's me and you just chatting. And dude, like sometimes I do have to watch because it's like Shelley would call it like my radio voice. And it's like I'll catch myself. Like I like it when we just flow conversationally.
Oh, yeah, right.
As opposed to trying to say. But at the same time, we are trying to put out something that at least sounds good, to people. So if the camera goes out, they can still just listen to it,
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
And that's what I like the organic side of it. And although, dude, when I listen to your knowledge plus experience equals wisdom, and the music just like sets the tone.
Well, and that would be an easy ad,
Yeah,
and it would also be easy to just load it up to a podcast host,
right.
And just make it audio.
Yeah,
but I think YouTube fits right now. I just haven't. I get to what's the word when you think too much about what other people will think? Not self-aware, self-conscious.
Yeah, self-conscious.
So I'll sit down and try to play some music, and I can't get into the space where I'm not trying to make the right intro.
Right.
So one of these days.
Right.
And then I'll go back and add it to all of them, and it'll be like it was never. It's hard to believe we're at episode 25. Or
is that what it is?
Or,
a lot. Over 20.
So, yeah, you had a book signing last night for Integrity and Peace.
I did.
That was cool.
I did. And, dude, it was really cool. It was... So, I think maybe I even talked about this. Like, there's an aspect of me that is like, well... I don't want to have a book signing. It sounds like, especially saying it like yourself, hey, would you come to my book signing,
I want you to come pay attention to me.
Yeah. And so there's an aspect of that, but it is really nice. Now, it was interesting because I tried to think about who might be there, because in this case, obviously, it's a local book signing. Like, if I would get to do one ever somewhere else, obviously, I'm not going to know people, and it would be much more simple. But I did try to actually say... something specific in the signings to people,
because
possible.
Right. It was personal.
Like the one person there, I truly think that they would be a good role model for everybody across the board. Like I was like, and that's what I wrote. Like you're truly a good role model for people of all ages. I know she primarily works with youth, but she's just seems like a really balanced person. And of course, I'm sure she could come in here and tell us all her shortcomings. We could tell ours,
Yeah.
So, but it was a very good experience. And of course, my wife, Shelley, killed it with the food presentation, with her charcuterie board.
Yeah, that was awesome. I was so wishing I hadn't eaten just before I got there.
So, and all her Christmas cookies that are getting ready for... to Sun Meal Prep, she pulled some out. She sold boxes of cookies for Christmas.
Awesome.
So that was cool. So a little shout out to Sun Meal Prep and my wife Shelley. So what do you want to talk about today?
Well, what's been on my it's oftentimes I feel like what's been on my mind is like his selfish indulgence, but I can't help thinking more about global values and sort of like how your book translates, from the individual to the masses, mostly because I'm obsessed with change at a rapid pace. I mean, the things that I'm kind of working on my own investigative work are how are we going to solve the world's problems? And I think Integrity and Peace lies out a perfect map for how we solve our problems as individuals. But then in my mind, and maybe it's just my impatient ego, well, that's like maybe some percentage of us will figure this out in our lifetimes, and maybe some subset of that will teach this to the next generation. And then, about 5,000 years go by, maybe we'll be able to change from the individual up So I just get frustrated by that, even though it's like an awesome pathway. And so I always think about, like, from an ecosystem science perspective, well, what about the other end? Like, what I get with global values is the only word I have to describe it. Like, what kind of work can we do that is not as our individual, but in a group sense? And I think it's at those levels, because where we work now are the intermediate levels, right? We try to solve like these community problems. Like a town like Bristol, Virginia will tackle the homeless problem in their 40 square mile city, and that's a great effort, but it's not going to change anything really in the grand scheme of 8 billion people. And as an individual reaches enlightenment, what does that really change in the short term? I think it's the perfect long-term solution. Well, that's what we were talking about last week, space and time. Mm-hmm. So this kind of goes at that's the time issue. It's like, I feel like we're a lot of really good, and I don't want to say this is a bad thing at all, a lot of really good people are working at these intermediate levels and kind of just spinning their wheels, and they're band-aiding. Not there. It's more than Band-Aids, because Band-Aids is at like the local level. Like, somebody's drowning, you pull them out of the water. Somebody's on fire, you douse them with water. Somebody has a drug and alcohol problem, you put them in. But so all that work is good, and I think it has to be maintained. But these middle level works, like school administrators or like state level environmental programs, like, what are they really doing? And can't we shift their work either toward things that are needed immediately or toward these upstream global values level problems? That's where again, maybe that's a completely tangent, and we'll cut all that out.
No, yeah.
So, because I want to address things on the short term, to some degree, to sort of just, if for no other reason than, it's like when you're working out. If you don't feel a little bit better or see some sort of short term progress, you're not going to be as likely to maintain that, because you're like, what is this even doing?
Right.
Without following your book, without really making an individual level effort to change your relationship with food, your life, whatever, which is a huge leap to do that all on our own. And it's not selfish, but we can't work solely at the individual level.
Right.
We have to, because we're all part of the one big whole.
Right. Okay. So maybe we can like break this down in real time here. And we, of course, happen to be recording this, but this will be good. Almost like on the thought process of something. So there's problems.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Right.
So, and now problems though are going to be anywhere, and we'll just talk in relation to people, although that would extend into the environment.
Yeah, that's good.
We'll talk into that. And so there's going to be individual problems, right?
Yeah.
And then there's going to be global problems, right? That everybody in the whole world, on the whole globe, on the whole flat globe, that, like, I think we've talked about it before, right? Like, there's flat earthers all around the globe.
That's a good one. I heard of one at SNL. Michael Che made a joke on the news that was something like, so and so found out that Santa Claus wasn't real, so he jumped off the edge of the earth. Or it wasn't Santa Claus. I'm not picking on that. But it was some other, like...
That's awesome.
And there's like a moment of... There's a pause where everybody's like, I don't get... Oh.
Right, yeah.
But that's
was
perfect.
Was it like Kyrie Irving? Was it the basketball player that always...
It might have been.
So he's, he's...
It was in the news. Somebody in the news.
Pretty famous basketball player, and he's a flat earther. And
it might have been.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, so we have problems from the individual level to the globe.
Which I would argue is like, the spatial scale, or a big chunk of the spatial scale from one individual person, up through this continuum of more and more people to the ultimate sort of, well, not the ultimate, the universe, I guess, would be like the ultimate.
Right.
It's a big chunk of the relevant spatial scale.
Yeah. So, I think, last week we kind of talked about the upstream and downstream aspect,
Which
or upstream,
also,
and it's not even necessarily downstream, the upstream and where you're at is what.
Oh man, that is so perfect. Yeah, because that's exactly how we well, I wrote a paper.
Yeah.
Basically, from an ecological viewpoint, that said, we go out in the stream and we measure stuff. We catch fish. We look at the pH. That point that we're measuring, it sort of demarcates the area of interest, right? It says, I'm interested in here, but by default, you're saying, now I'm interested in this point up.
Okay.
Like you're saying.
Right.
Like
Yep.
upstream of where you are.
Right. Because
people don't think like, I was like, we've been doing this for 30 years, people. Has nobody said this out loud?
Yeah.
That, this has nothing to do. We can't say anything about anything further down because of the way it works. And even the way you've laid it out here with globe at the top. And it's
That's the way
stream, it's the flow.
The way we think that.
Anyway.
Let me ask this, because this is something that I always thought about while I was hiking. And so, a big thing with hiking and water is worried about Giardia. Okay?
Yeah.
And so there's usually most people hiking, what would be recommended is to treat your water or filter your water. And then there's all kinds of different methods. That's not what to talk about here. But I got to the point where a lot of times I just drank any kind of flowing water, period. And
I only got Giardia twice.
Yeah, well, actually, I never got Giardia.
Yeah, I figured that was the.
This probably isn't real wood.
This is.
But
when you reach.
That's real wood. knock on wood. But the funny thing was that it was wherever I ever was, anywhere. Now I've only hiked on the East Coast on the Appalachian Trail,
right.
And I was out west in the Rockies on the Great Divide. But any place I've ever been on those, no matter how high I was, if there was water, there was a cow above me or a goat or something above me. Like there always was. Now I might have been higher than the water.
Oh, well, they did. Yeah, don't get me. I could do a whole episode on this, but yeah. And the E. coli contribution, which is kind of what we measure. We don't look at Giardia so much, but E. coli. Bad.
Okay.
Which is funny because E. coli measures it all, and only a small percentage of it is bad. So, your water's got E. coli in it. Well, guess what? So do our guts.
Right.
How do you know it's the bad one?
Yeah.
But they say that the wildlife contribution of, let's just put it this way, it's way higher than you ever would guess.
Well, and my always thing was I am more worried about the toxins that we're putting in other ways.
How about the ones in the air?
Right.
That you're breathing.
Right. Yeah. I was much more concerned with that.
Yeah.
I'm
with you. Well, my take on that, I just kind of realized this today, is we talk about water treatment. Well, let me preface this. I'll try to be quick. We took a lot of boat rides when we were in Egypt because of the Nile. Oh. And everything's around the Nile. And if you want to get up to the islands or across or whatever, there's not a whole lot of bridges, so you are in boats a lot. We're in a boat one day, the guy's, in the back, he's Namibian, sort of southern Egypt, getting in where you're going into Africa. And he's just he's talking, he's running the boat, and we're just kind of hanging out. He grabs his coffee mug, off of the, sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't know that was God.
Actual live coffee mug. Well, it's just water. It's just water.
Anyway, he dips it in the Nile and chugs it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, sure, of course, everybody here can drink it. Well, and then it made me wonder, how much of Americans could drink our water? Not in New York, obviously, and not in Flint, Michigan, and some of these places, but around here, how much of that is just we've been so softened up that we have no getting into the COVID thing. So anyway, so the solutions to water treatment in the future are not. This is the point. Are not super tech over. It's a compromise between hardening our systems up a little bit and softening our standards a little bit as far as what we consider to be drinkable water, and the technology to treat the water, right? It's a compromise between those two things. Whereas I think we look at it more of we've got to have these giant water treatment plants that punch out pure distilled H2O or we're all going to die.
And then that water. So this is interesting. I always thought, my mom is 84, and she talked about in the 60s, I was really worried whether we would have clean water by now. And this is 10 years ago, 20 years ago that she was saying that to me.
Yeah.
And, And I was like, well, do we have clean water? Really? Because what's your definition of clean water? Because it looks clean, but if there's a ton, I think we're good.
Well, just in case.
There's a ton of, what would be in water? Chlorine, and some people put fluorine, right?
But there's so many other things, and the EPA standards that we've created are so arbitrary, and most of our understanding for what we would consider toxic water are done on Pomethyles natatus, the fathead minnow, and a little zooplankton rotifer in the water. That's how we know that stuff's bad. So we go, well, hey, what's this benzene all about? Give me that tank full of minnows. Hey, 1 drop of benzene's no big deal. 2, they're all dead. Okay, well, we can't have more than 2 drops of benzene in our water. That's informative, but it's not the Holy Grail. Right. And we forget about that when we talk about that. When it's in the paper, it's all, can you believe this municipality had 1.8 milligram, whatever of benzene in their water? They're murderous. It's like, no. Do you see that? Again, with the upstream. Here's where you're talking. Here's what the science says. Here's how we did it. Here was the reasoning. Do you see now how it's like opened up some room for discussion, at least, to whether or not the conclusions that you're making are valid? Right.
So the one thing that comes to mind for me, and so this is what's so complicated, because the idea behind my book and plenty of other pieces, and so I would point to, say, A Course in Miracles, which is self-described in it as a reversal of thinking. It's a program to create a reversal of thinking. Now, the reversal of thinking starts on our list here of the individual at the bottom going up. The problem is that so few people actually do the true reversal of thinking, right? Because we're so conditioned into the system.
Right.
And then even when and then that brings the whole idea of the systems in, even when we try to, or we're aware of the system and we're really working on the things that I'm talking about in my book or Course in Miracles or whatever system, because even, there's people with religious foundations that it's working, that they're practicing
moving upstream.
They truly are, But so no matter where, to finish that thought is that's the most upstream way, and that overall change maybe seems slow and painful as people get it. But as the more people develop that, and it starts bringing the level up for everybody, basically, the more people, and then it will probably be what's the
critical mass.
The critical mass, the 10th monkey, the 100th monkey, whatever, the thing where then it was it's this way until it doesn't have to hit 51%.
The tipping point
to get
Malcolm Gladwell.
Right, to get massive changes,
Totally.
So that's thing. And I think then through history is, and we've talked about this, it's not necessarily as simple as this, but in when you look back through times from being a forager to horticulture to agrarian, industrial age, information age, whatever age. I call this the age of accountability.
Oh, that's cool.
Actually, I don't know. Because I just think that...
Yeah, that's good.
It's with the internet and videos and social media, and it's just it's the age of accountability of your actions, because they're probably going to be on video, or they're on video. Your words and actions are highly likely going to be on video. And you think about something like Airbnb and eBay. So this is 2 places where it's you could screw somebody.
And it can affect your business directly.
But, there's going to be reviews, on it. And so, there's going to be consequences. It's really the age of accountability in that respect.
That's cool.
And I think then that's something, because again, pointing towards the idea of a heaven, which is the state of lack of suffering caused between humans and human to themselves. Really, that's what heaven is, right? Because now here, so could we create that here? Well, that's hard, but we're still going to deal with environmental, with weather and stuff like that. Tornadoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, anything like that. But, the suffering caused by humans in any direction. Human to human, human to themselves, or animal environment, whatever. So that going towards that state I mean, that just takes time for everybody.
I get it.
You know, to do that. But like, we're going to constantly, but we have to. So that's where we're going. But like, we're still going to have all these problems along the way. But no matter where you're at on that, this is where I was going to go earlier. No matter where you're at on that, you're always in the middle of the stream. Like, for your stream, you're always the center of no matter what. Like, it doesn't matter where, you know what I mean? Because there's going to be an upstream from you, and there's going to be a downstream from you.
That's true. Like you were saying before, it's relative to your position. And that's perspective, right? I mean, you sort of... But the problem is, I think, the difference is some people are aware of that, and other people are in total crisis panic mode. And wherever they are is the worst place in the stream to be, or the best place in the stream to be, or whatever. Unless you're aware of the continuum and sort of the endpoints along that continuum, you don't know where you are.
Right.
And I think a lot of people just don't.
So, I mean, I think the thing is that always just gets me back to, and of course every tradition more or less says this, and Eckhart Tolle and whoever, it's like the power of now, Ram Dass.
Yeah,
whoever,
right. Now is where you are.
Be here now, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's where you're at. And then, so as we create this reversal of thinking within ourselves, because you can hear about it and be told about it. But you're the one that has to do it. And as much as, I mean, we've talked about this all the time. I mean, I think we're on this. It's like, it's the practice. You know, I mean, it's because you've got to constantly, and you got to constantly come back to it and then implement these things. And you're not always going to have the answer from the technological side, say, because you don't have that expertise, right? So you can hold up your thing. So, like, it's easy to think, like, you know what I mean? Like, I went through a phase where I really felt like I was like, I didn't feel this, but like in retrospect, it was like I'm Captain Planet, you know? Like,
Well, I think most environmentalists think they're living some.
And it's just like, okay, well, you know, so somebody watching this could be like, look at him, man, he's drinking out of a plastic water bottle. You know, it's like, yes, I am. Except I do feel this, at least, repeatedly over and over. I don't know how long I've had this particular one. Right. You know what I mean?
At least you're reusing it.
Should I ever, and I will try to recycle it, you know, at the end of it. Now, is any of that good enough? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, so, I mean, the person that is going to criticize me for using it, or like straws. Like, of course, you know, that's the thing. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, straws, should we be using, you know, plastic straws and stuff like that? And,
turtle-friendly straws.
Yeah, you know, and it's just like, well, there's a lot of these things, but again, we can't punch down at the people for doing whatever, you know. So you got to change what you can at your level where you're at.
Yeah, and my only point is that's a great example, is that our efforts are focused in what I would call just the wrong part of the stream. You know, we think that getting on somebody's case because they use plastic straws or drink out of water bottles is having some is doing some good, when I would rather take that effort, that energy, that spirit, that concern, that care, that desire to be accountable, and point it in a more effective direction, right? It just comes down to sort of like efficiency, and that more effective direction may be something, you know, some local river cleanup problem or something like that, and that's fine. But really, what's going to make the most difference is moving your perspective up. You know, it's not even about where should you take your environmental concern and place that in the continuum. It's take a minute and read a book about systems thinking and think about what variables led to that. And to me, at the end of the day, this is always going to come back to government, commerce, finance, and things like religion. All the big organizing things at the top that are really ultimately driving all these downstream things that we're looking at. And by continually, it's like, and this is how I feel when I see somebody arguing about, for example, the Prince Harry and Meghan or whatever, like just made a Netflix video. Yeah. And so everybody's arguing about this. And I'm like, oh, well, what's of interest here? You know, the royal family, government, rules, you know, hierarchies. Okay, let's talk about these. Quit punching down or across or up at these two individual people, because that's all we're gossiping about. We obviously want to talk about it, and so let's just get to the level that's of interest that where we can actually make changes.
Right.
Why continually spin? And that's what I see. That's how I see the world now. Is just everybody's, like in the middle of a stream. So at the top of a stream, it's like a spring, and they're tiny, and we always say you could pee across. A man could pee across them. A person with a penis could pee across it. That's a stream. Then they get bigger, and then they get more complicated, and then you can't even see across the Mississippi. They get giant, and in that middle ground, you have a lot of complex hydrology. It's not just flow. When you get downstream, it's pretty much massive directional flow. When you're upstream, it's fast directional flow. When you get in the middle, there's a lot of eddies and turbulence and back currents. And I just look at the world now and I see a bunch of people almost drowning, but not drowning, maintaining whatever their position is in the middle of the stream. And the way they do that is by talking about all these problems that are circular, just like the eddies. It's just like the eddies. They're not going anywhere. And then on top of that, I see the conspiracy theory of the government, the corporations, the religions, the rule makers going, you're right where we want you. You're not looking upstream and seeing, behind the curtain what we're doing. You're focusing on all these problems. And that's the model that I want to change. And what you say is great, because that's going to free up individuals from this middle and allow them to see the upstream and the downstream and then make decisions for themselves. Probably the right ones, because the way you start looking at things, it's a lot easier to go, oh, this is an argument that isn't worth having. This is a battle over who's right or whatever it is. Let me get out of this eddy and get over to the side and take my breath and then decide what I want to do for myself. Critical thinking. So to me, it's like the perfect model from nature to both sort of say what might be going on in humanity and what the solutions might be.
Yeah. So I think it's the global problems to me seem they're so massive, and I don't think most people have the ability to take them on.
I agree. I mean, that's the first critique is you can't do that.
And so you have to just start like where you're at, doing what is in front of you. Right? Yeah. And then if those pieces, as all those individual pieces are taking care of themselves, if we can start moving that forward, and again, it's that impatience, like when you can see that there's a better way to get there. You want that better way to start right now. But we got to... It's just not the way it works, and that's because there's epochs of time that we just. Because you talked about this too. Like, I mean, it's easier. Like when we break it down, like from, foraging to horticulture to agrarian. Those are like big epochs of time, right?
But there's also things that happen. Like I always like the monolith in 2010, the Space Odyssey, 2001, the Space Odyssey.
2001.
Yeah, they say that and this may not be true, of course, but in that movie they depict massive shifts in the opposite of that. Rather than gradualism, these massive shifts, what they call punctuated equilibrium and evolution, is happening, represented by the monolith in the movie that comes out in the beginning when cavemen discover fire, and in the end when the guy realizes that, whatever he realizes at the end of that movie, I don't really understand, that he is awareness, that he is the universe, that he is this expansive jump from the molecular to the universal level. Those things do happen. I mean, they can happen. We can have, like under the influence of psychedelics and in some forms of therapy, people do have these sort of leaps in this progress that you're talking about. Call it progress. That has a value judgment to it, but whatever, this change, this directional change. And I don't know why it frustrates me so much. And I know why it frustrates me so much, because I really feel like, and this goes back to you're talking about your mom and clean air and clean water. We're at a point now where everything is going to start happening exponentially faster every day.
Sure.
And so I don't want to be like a alarmist or whatever, because I don't really have But we're up against the wall now.
Well, that's
The rate of our change is too slow to account for the rate of our problems.
right. And so to think about that, like another way, like the whole idea of climate change, right, is that's those things that occur, the conditions to create flooding, the conditions to create tornadoes.
Right. There's like they're happening upstream, and they're setting the stage for what can happen downstream.
They're going to, and we see it. Flooding is clearly happening more and more. Like you see that in this region, right? Last night there was tornadoes in Louisiana, right? And so those things have always happened, but we're setting the stage to have them happen more and more frequently.
It's just a time thing, back to the time and space thing.
Yeah. Now, can we reverse that whole thing immediately? I don't know, because that's complicated. But it's still like the thing. I think it's like, okay, well, these problems, someday the world's going to end. Someday, like whatever that means.
Yeah, right.
Now,
probably blow up or get really hot or
well,
really
I just
cold.
really hope that the Death Star comes out
and sucks us up, or
just like all at one time.
Yeah, getting really cold is boring. Like, is it? Gradually freeze.
It just appears. Yeah, right. Let's go out like with a bang.
Yeah.
Like if we're going to go out, let's go. Okay, but so it's going to happen sometime, right? But like we should trying not to expedite the process.
Yeah, which is I would argue what's happening. Yeah.
Right. So somehow we need to like make changes, and I think people get like, okay, so from like the base level, say environmentalist, right? Be like, well, you shouldn't throw garbage in the street.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really? Well, so first of all, there's some people that just throw garbage in the street because there's garbage in the street.
Although you never know how it got there.
Sure.
It doesn't necessarily
But, I mean,
some person like...
Right. So, and it's like because it's a catch, it's so complicated there too. But no, some people literally throw it out their window.
Yeah, go to Egypt.
Yeah.
Did you read about the 60-meter high trash pile in India?
16 meters
60.
high. 60. Yeah.
Like, it's a mountain. I mean, and granted, we had one of those in Virginia Beach too, but this is just out there with death.
Yeah. Well, so that's
surrounding it.
What was the movie? They had the Great Garbage, the Great Garbage landslide, or in oh my gosh, it's totally escaping me. But it has Luke Wilson in it, and he was frozen. The Great Garbage Avalanche of like 2150. And he was frozen in a military experiment. And this, all right, we might not flow here for a while I look this up.
Just the whole Luke Wilson idea just makes me laugh. I don't know why.
Idiocracy.
I've never seen Idiocracy.
Okay,
That's funny.
So Idiocracy is the Great Garbage Avalanche. I want to say it's like 2150. And he comes back, and so everything's deteriorated mentally. Everything is sponsored by something, so it's more or less it's like Gatorade is who's sponsoring things, but it's not. They don't call it Gatorade. But so like the people, instead of putting water on their crops, are putting Gatorade because it's sponsored by Gatorade, and like the Capitol building is sponsored by something, and the White House is sponsored by something, and like everything has got its corporate sponsor behind it, and then. The guy's name's like Hector Camacho or something. That might be a real boxer's name.
Yeah,
he's the president.
Macho Man.
And he's got like gun, and it's gone that direction. And then so Luke Wilson's like the smartest man alive, at the time.
Because he's frozen in time.
And so he kind of saves the day. But that's what the Great Garbage Avalanche. Anyway, so 60-meter garbage mountain.
Well, I mean, that's happening. I mean, it's happening. And again, everything I see is it's just the difference is as things change through time in the past, it's been slow. And the Earth is sort of, we've all evolved for that sort of change. Notwithstanding these monolithic sort of rapid changes that happen every once in a while, like a volcano erupts or the ice age, whatever. Things happen that change things really quick. But for the most part, it's gradualism is the day-to-day. And what we've done is we've rapidly expedited that process to the point where we've overwhelmed the homeostatic buffering system of the planet to compensate, right? And so we're running it It's like, you were running a 1970 Volkswagen Beetle at 95 miles an hour down the interstate, redlining
You're redlining.
You're wearing every part on that thing out as you go, and it's not going to be a minor oil leak or an overheat. It's going to be a catastrophic explosion that destroys the capacity of that vehicle to maintain any of its. And again, that sounds catastrophic. And I don't mean it to sound like that because I don't feel that way. I feel like there's ways around this. It's just going to require. And you keep saying like a 180. I'm just looking for a change. Not necessarily a 180. It's just a change from the tunnel vision, one way or the highway line of thinking that we have now. Maybe that's something I haven't pointed out. I mean, I think we all suffer from a very intense myopic idea about what success is, what the best is, what we should do, our global values. Like this is what the problem is. We've narrowed everything into this tiny little channel. And all we need to do is open that up and go, let's consider some other alternatives, not necessarily turn the whole train around instantaneously. And we're not even good at that anymore.
Right. Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, though. Like, we're kind of like talking two ways. So what has to happen is the individual has to have the 180 reversal in thinking.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Right.
But then the collective can't necessarily change 180 at one time.
Yeah,
like, we can't go from gas automobiles.
Yes, you can't just pull the plug on fossil fuels today.
Yes.
That would cause massive.
Right.
It would be like the cost-benefit analysis would be like the destruction. Well, I think we should actually consider that. We should use that as our straw man baseline null hypothesis. What if we did this? What would it really look like?
Okay.
Let's just not say everyone's going to die and it's going to suck. Oh, no, back up. What's really going to happen? And then we can address those things sort of one by one and go, all right, we don't want this. And that process may actually help us identify our global values, right?
And so, that's an interesting way to just think about that. Okay.
It's the scientific
so
way.
So here's what we could do. So we have to change the way we're doing. There's not an unlimited supply of fossil fuels.
And that is a radical viewpoint, what you just said.
And
we have to change. Many people disagree.
Right.
So that's where you got to start.
Well, and so first of all, the thing that has to be eliminated is, are you making financial benefit because of that directly?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and
well,
so
that's a big part of it for sure.
And so, like Exxon and
Elon
whoever,
Musk.
They don't get votes. On this,
right. Or that's not a global value anymore. That, maybe the result of that is that we take off being a billionaire as like something we consider a worthy goal for a human. Because that's what we're saying. We're protecting these billionaires or these corporations and saying we can't possibly hurt them. They don't have any rights in my world. Now, whether that trickles down and like makes 50,000 employees of Exxon starve to death overnight, well, okay.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But that's the way it unfolds. But
right.
I like what you said about individuals still have to change the way that we have to change. And I think like I said, you've covered it. What I'm looking for is what's the link? How do we then cooperate to make this threshold happen? Because I do think, it'll randomly happen. We found each other. People find each other. It's happening right now. I really feel that. Just look at the podcasts that are out there.
Sure.
But what tools, tricks, mechanisms can we look to nature to find out, like, how do we actually start to cooperate to find this thing that you're laying out?
Well, and I think that's where, dude, like, people with your intelligence and experience. Dude, you're a doctor. Okay, so, and you have a background. So where you have your expertise, right? So the more people that you've had a reversal of thinking. Okay. Now, you might feel like you're battling it more than, if you compare yourself to me, you might feel that I'm battling. But I can tell you, I battle it every single day because my ego still says a bunch of things.
Well, yeah, that kind of battle. Yeah. Sure.
Right. Okay. You know what I mean? So, like you're searching for the way now to take your reversal into the next level. Well, you do have a level of experience, knowledge, development, all that that maybe you can kind of like start showing the way.
Right.
Like,
It's accumulated enough to that threshold of now I've got a new role.
Right.
Or something.
So now the more people, and this is why, again, it's the only thing you can do, is like at your level. And then this does get tough though, because it does. So, dude, like I'm asked to run for like local government a lot in Damascus and stuff. And I really just don't want to do it. I don't think I would actually be as good at it as
people
some
think
of the people think I would. And I do think that I would rather try to help the people that are in it, like how to think. This is the way you need to think.
Right. But maybe that's exactly what it needs.
Is the person. So, I've heard somebody talk about like that Jimmy Carter, when he was running for president, I think Marianne Williamson was the one talking about this, that when Jimmy Carter was running for president, he was kind of more like really running on, I'm going to use the word his faith, but might not
he was
be.
big.
And his intuition and like his real humanity that, that like of who he was. And then when he won, that he wasn't able to really demonstrate that. And was that a product of the system? Like all the battles, like that he really couldn't do anything as...
Yeah.
I mean, everybody thinks like the president's like so powerful, but
right. Well, no,
it's not that simple.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And whether he changed or conceded or was absolutely trying every day and just couldn't.
Yeah.
We don't know, but I think that's...
When you talked about being in the turbulence and the eddies and stuff like that, I just always think of the line in what is it, Alice in Wonderland, in the Red Queendom, the Red Queen, you have to run full speed just to stay in place, right? I mean, that's...
And you think...
That's what you're doing in the turbulence there, right?
And you think the whole world is that. You don't realize it's the same little circle. You think it's longitudinal. You think you're covering all this space and time, but really you're just spinning in circles.
Right.
In the queendom's croquet.
Dude, I think the thing for me with the global problems is I know that I don't have the intelligence of how to change those things directly. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
sure. I don't think any one person does.
But I know that no matter what, it has to start like with you, and that's the only corner that you can take care of. And if your corner is the higher up you go in terms of your position in society,
interesting,
taking care of people, you do have more responsibility for more people under you then, so to speak. With that, you know what I mean? Whether you're a council person, a mayor, into the government, state government, so local government, let's just talk about it this way, local government into state government into federal government, just talking about this country, period. Like not even going to the next level, right? Yeah. Okay, and really though, you would think like with the United States, which gets kind of known as a world leader, even though like if you look at a lot of numbers, we're not leading in lots of things, right? But as a world leader, in a sense, then that would be what other people could aspire to.
Yeah, sure,
right?
Sure, it's an example to.
And so the thing is like you can only. No matter where, like I can only influence the people that I can influence, right? Like, so writing a book opens the doors for me to influence more people,
than just talking on the street corner.
And right. And then if I ran for a local government, would that be beneficial? To me, I don't think that's the use of, again, I don't think I'm that... That's not my skill set, actually, right? You know what I mean? But to me, my skill set is to help those people. Now, to you though too, like your skill set might be to help them people on a decision, and it might be worth for you or anybody to write to the council person, the mayor locally, or the state representative, or the senator, or whatever, to that person, to call and try to do it. The problem is that the systems then are so strong, but those systems, I think, are just still going to take time unless we somehow riot together.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's the answer.
No, this is exactly what I'm talking about, because to hear you talk about it almost reminds me of what everybody attributes to Einstein's definition of insanity, of using the same methodology to get you out of a problem that you used to get into it.
Right.
Following the logical chain of thought by trying to influence people through the existing governmental channels, to me, is insanity, because you're using a system that you're trying to change itself.
Right.
What you have to do is cut it off at the top. You have to cut off the head.
Right.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. And I don't know that that's a good thing or a bad thing, and I didn't realize it until you just said it that way, that I'm sort of arguing for and maybe that is like a 180, but a complete overhaul from the most upstream.
Yeah.
Where's the water coming from? Here, this is bad. Let's shut it off. Shut off that tap and turn on this one over here. And I don't see why we can't do that. I'm lost. I'm looking around going, stop saying everybody quit saying we can't do that. We can think about it. We can lay the whole thing out. What if? Let's run 15 scenarios. Let's get 30 great minds from Damascus and Virginia and Federal, take that sort of a thing and say, how would we go about changing this? And of course you'll realize you have to bring in the whole nation at that point, because that's how we're set up now. And run through the iterations of what you think the possible outcomes would be, and then from that, use that to inform the next model, and maybe that will point at actual ways you can get into the system and change it. In fact, I would argue, it's funny that a mutual friend of ours, Chris Butcher, and the guy who lives in Damascus, was telling me that he was reading about taxation and tax rates and how everything really started with Reagan. And it's just amazing how many things happened just in our lifetime, and that represented, and what was that, 1980?
80 to 80, yeah.
Yeah, so 1980, 40 years ago, a massive reprogramming of sort of the corporate tax structure, government, whatever we see today.
Sure.
Creating the Elon Musk of the world happened in 40 years.
Yep.
So we can change things within that structure, like you're suggesting, by running these models and pinpointing the places that can have the most effect. It can be done like that, but I think we have to start with with the most severe mental exercises. The thought experiments, right? Of just seeing, and that's what I'm after. And I know people must have done this before. Haven't they? Or is it so radical and different and hard for people to grasp? And if it is, what the hell happened? Shouldn't we have that built in us as humans to be able to, again, critical thinking? When we were in school, people talked about there needs to be more critical thinking. There needs to be more critical thinking, because for so long the pattern was reducing critical thinking. It's like my wife said last night. She's like, well, that was the point of organized religion. Don't have independent thought. This is what you need that's in this book. Follow these rules. Don't have your own rules. And that got me thinking, wow, what? So everybody looked at that model and went, wow, look, it made all these sheep. Can we do that with the government? and so we can undo that. But I think there are probably maybe pinpoints in that machine that will have more or less influence, or that represent potential points of change, like you say. Don't just write your congressman, but I don't know what the alternative is.
Yeah. I mean, it is so complicated, because how do you? I think most people, the school system's a good thing, public school system.
Yeah, it's smaller.
So, a lot of people will agree. So anybody that is sending their kid to a private school or homeschooling is by default saying that they don't like the public school system, right? I mean, you're choosing this other means.
Yeah, or that you like some other method better.
Yeah, you like it better, right? Yeah, that you're doing it, better. And, I think so and of course then those have shortcomings.
Yeah, right. Nothing's perfect.
Right.
There's no perfect boat.
They have those shortcomings there too. So, and I think a lot of people that even if they support public education, or they don't even think about it, and their kids go to public education, let's say it that way too, that they are also questioning the public school system. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's like, okay.
Nobody really says this is perfect.
yeah, right. Well, I mean, the teachers can tell you all the BS of what's going on, right in the schools, So, like, on that level, it's like we know that there needs to be change, like, so collectively on both sides of the tendency in the U.S. to be Democrat or Republican. That's the tendency. So both sides know there needs to be change, but we're so kind of more concerned with, like, the other side being wrong.
The gossip, the eddies. We're stuck in the eddies.
Yeah. We're stuck in the eddies with that then we're not realizing that we're both saying, okay, well, what needs to be different? Well, what does need to be different? So, like, if you're on that side, well, what needs to be different? Well, this is my list of 10 things I think need to be different. Okay, well, then here's my list of 10 things that needs to be different. Well, first of all, let's look and see if any of those match, because some of them probably do.
Absolutely.
Right, they probably do.
Yeah.
And I would guess then that some of them could even be, well, it could be this thing. So somebody could kind of come with the global problem. They'd be like, well, this is the problem here. And then somebody else would be like, well, this is the problem. But really, it's going to be the same. Well, those are like the same, like parts of the same whole there. So, you have to do it. But that has to be, and dude, you've talked about this, like, having a discussion, having a discourse. Yeah.
Real conversations.
And somehow we have to really do that without just blindly going with the talking points that news, like, and so, like, we've talked about that before, like, my mom falls into that trap, like, where she'll watch Fox News and then she's mad about things that she's not actually mad about. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Well, yeah, both of those things, I think, come back to what you said earlier, is accountability. If you work in the school systems, if you are in politics, and one of the things you have to solve is the school problem, that the voters, the constituents have said, address this, and you don't, guess what? You're done. No. Middle of the term, special election. You're out. You won't participate in a Robert's Rules of Order, whatever type of meeting where actually things happen and you're going to filibuster or change the subject or ignore you're out.
Right.
And there should be a mechanism in there present at the meeting going, nope, you suck.
Yeah.
You're not doing very well.
So, like, let's just take the government level and the global climate, 2 levels. Do both of those need to crash completely?
That would, to me, that's the monolith.
Yeah.
I would love for that to happen. I think the best thing that could possibly happen is, and I don't know what it even looks like, right? Yeah. Is for some arbitrary mechanism to destroy that system as we know it and force us to rebuild it. The problem is, unless we're ready for that, it's going to be like the pandemic. All the guys and girls that were in second position are going to swarm in and recreate it to look even worse, right? Unless it's built by the people,
right?
Right. It's going to be built by the people that have a self-interest in it.
Right.
But I would love to see that happen. I don't know if it's necessary.
Yeah. So, dude, it always just, and I mean, I know those problems, they're so massive, they're so overwhelming that it becomes, so I think a lot of people then suffer from, like, paralysis.
But I would argue that that's entirely intentional. The stacking of corporations, whether they're universities or public schools or governments or religions, with middle management and more complicated upper structures is, again, it falls into this Reagan last 40, 50 years era. And I would argue that someone was a genius to design that. Let's put so many cogs in this machine. Maybe they don't actually work together, but they're all in there. So if anybody wanted to go in and change it, they would be so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Because this is a classic strategy in science. I don't really have much to say, but if I take my thesis and my results neither of which has very much meat in it, and put a whole bunch of hocus pocus smoke and mirrors in the middle, I'm going to wow you over with complexity. You're going to have no other conclusion to make except that I'm a genius and whatever I'm saying is correct, and we can just bypass the whole scientific method altogether.
Yeah.
And that is a viable, productive strategy.
Well, did we go over our time limit?
Yeah.
Are we into our...
Well, we'll see on the video.
We'll see-
if it doesn't
see
show
what
up, this is the
happens
problem we've been having in the
See
future.
what happens today.
But yeah, maybe we're at a point where we've sort of arrived at a larger topic for next week.
Yeah, well, and I think it's just... It's... Solving the global problems is not necessarily an answerable piece because they're so complex.
Yeah, there might not be a
Yeah, you know what I mean? And
solution.
And that's why, though, it always comes back to you, man. It always comes back to where are you at and what are you doing and are you open to change? Are you open to being wrong, right? Are you open to expanding your views? And then are you not pointing fingers at the other person, you know? And dude, so like an individual relationship all the time, I think I've talked about this on here maybe before. My mom said to me one time, and I don't even think I was in a relationship at the time, but she was just saying, you can fight with your partner every day if you choose. And I was like, okay. And because there's going to be whichever way you think something should be.
Yeah, right.
Like,
I see what you're saying.
You know, so like Jewel has a song, I never leave wet towels on the floor anymore or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're the person that leaves wet towels on the floor or you don't like the wet towels on the floor or you're the person that doesn't make the bed and the partner wants you to make the bed.
The toilet seat issue.
Yeah. Okay. So you can fight over that though, if you want. And then like, if you want.
And that could be your whole relationship.
That could be your whole relationship because you can choose to fight every single day. Now, I'm not saying that you should just ignore every single thing, but you should also then have the open honesty with the person of what the problem is that you are so annoyed by that you can't get over it.
Yeah.
Okay? And then you have to be willing to, when they tell you something, you have to be willing to accept that annoys them. And then also, both of you cannot, when, you know, hey, I don't like wet towels on the floor, the comeback is not, well, I don't like spoons left on the sink.
Right. Or deal with it.
Yeah,
or
right.
Too
you know
bad.
what I mean?
Or,
Right, yeah. That's not the comeback.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Because that's the
You
Eddie.
know, and it's like, because
That's
the Eddie, right? You know, and it's just like, okay, listen. So, first of all, like, you can just go in your head like, well, I don't like wet towels on the floor, but I know that I do some stupid things too that probably drive her or him up the wall. Right. And so I think about this too. And Shell and I we're really good at just saying what's up. And it was something, we were filling out something online or something. Like it was not a joke thing, but like just share information kind of joke, you know.
Yeah.
And it was like, what does your partner do that drives you crazy or whatever? And I wrote, I think I told her, we didn't write, we were just answering them out loud to each other. It was when she'll take her like yoga kind of tight pants off, that she'll like have her underwear still on them. Like she just takes them off all at one time.
Piece,
she'll
like,
even just
like a kid.
like wash them like that and stuff. And so I said that, and then so two things happened though with that funny. And I don't remember what she said about me. It might have been leaving spoons on the counter for real because I'm really good at leaving spoons out. But two things happened. One is she became aware of like that,
right.
like that's like, okay, well that's. You know, I should probably take those off because they got to come off sooner or later.
Well, I can make
anyways.
a decision. Yeah, what am I going to do about it?
But then also, it made me go, okay, because this is a piece of thankfulness. Because sometimes you see like people kind of like want to get. It's like they're a little irritated of like people being like thankful for things. Like I don't, what should I be thankful for? Well, you don't need to be thankful for your parent that abused you. You don't need to be thankful for that. But what do you have in your life that you do want to be thankful for? So I do want to be thankful for my wife, and I do want to enjoy spending my life with her. And so when I'm doing laundry and I need to take her underwear off of her pants,
right.
and then I even like, one leg will be inside out and the other one's like right.
Yeah, oh my God, just
like
don't get me started.
So I'll just take it, and at that moment I'm like, well, would you rather her not be here, or would you rather pull the underwear off the pants? well, I would much rather pull the underwear off the pants.
And
right?
that's the
my
recipe.
moment of being in the moment of what's going on, and I am thankful for my life that I get to share with her because my life is more fun with her. Like, you know what I mean?
Well,
That's what
you're
I like.
accountable for your own.
Yeah, you know, and so that's the thing. And
actions.
I think though, but that then has to go out to every level. And if so many people cannot take care of business at home, and then where does that go upstream?
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
You're
you know what I
right.
mean?
If you can't handle that, then you're just going to apply the same models outside. Well, well, go ahead. I don't
Right. Well, and it doesn't mean though that like every relationship then is salvageable and fixable, and like it can't always be only one person trying to do. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes you do have to walk away from things, and that's of course hard too. I mean, most people I know have stayed in a relationship longer than what they should have for whatever reason.
Deal breakers, you know, because that's just cost benefit. You don't see it, but you're actually getting less out of this than it's burning. Well, that's something I got out of this that I didn't foresee is this responsibility of, which I guess you sort of embody by writing the book in the first place, is this, I guess responsibility is the right word, but it's like once you've achieved whatever I've achieved, and I don't even know what that is, but if I want things to change, then part of what I have to do, besides work on myself, is then translate that out to other people and create more opportunities for other people to do the same thing. Not to go out and change people, but to change the world such that it becomes more available to people that are on different levels.
Well,
and I didn't really.
Yeah, you're right, dude. Because you can't change people.
That.
So but they might change because of
something
your behavior.
Yeah, like you said, use the word influence, and I never really got that. I didn't really see it. I almost would have said I would have disagreed with that before this show.
Well, and again, that doesn't necessarily fix any global problem, of course. Right,
but it's the thing, you know. If I'm going to be responsible for my own shit of wishing this would go faster, you have presented a very reasonable way to do that. So if I'm the guy that's like, that's dumb, which is something I do all the time. Like my wife, I'll be like, you know, I just don't want to work out today, and she's like, well, why don't you just go try? And I just like, that's a dumb idea, because that's not what you want to hear in the moment. And so I almost have to deal with this now. Which is cool.
I'm glad we got to something today, because I was a little. I mean, it was a good conversation.
There's a lot in there.
I don't know. Oh yeah.
It's just we'll have to parse it out.
Yeah.
Next week.
Well, figure it out. We're right on. So probably by next week. I think next 2 weeks probably won't be good for me.
Well, we got.
And then
Jesus' birthday.
We'll hit. That's right. Jesus' birthday coming up, right around the corner.
But yeah, we will be back.
Cool.
We're back.
Alrighty. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Again, sometimes I feel like I can't help my own internal work.